Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes here, just waiting for a couple more people.
Well, good morning, everybody. I thought we'd get started now. I think we've got some people already signed in, but welcome to our third webinar in a series. We'll show the series in a little bit here, but this is going to be about BI360 from Solver. So I'm Paul James, so I'll be kind of hosting this and then turning it over to Amir from Solver. So as I said, we have a three-part series that we've done with the webinar. So the first one was June 12th. We did a kind of a picture of Power BI and what that can do for you. Then we did a June 26th, we had jet reports kind of showing that. And now we're on our third part with BI360. So the introduction to BI360, it is a world-class report and form designer with an Excel add-in. We'll also be able to see the cloud version, and the on-premise should be pretty much the same view now with the complete web portal and budgeting. Really excited. They revamped the whole view and user interface for the on-premise and the cloud. Looks really nice. So I think you'll really like to see how that works. So presenting today is me, Paul James. I'm the BI practice leader for Boyer & Associates. And then we have Amir from Solver, and he'll introduce himself in a little bit here. So here at Boyer, our kind of motto is making businesses better. So what that means is we're trying to help you make your business better, not just sell you something just for our benefit. It's really for your benefit too. So about Boyer, we were founded in 1994. We have about 325 clients. Currently we have 17 staff, and we are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. So in here, Boyer, we have a core value, trust, effort, attitude, and meaningful relationships. So it kind of spells team. So that's kind of how we operate within our organization and with all of our clients. What we like to do is we like to help resolve problems, eliminating islands of information, making you self-sufficient, and helping you think through process improvements with your ERP systems and your data. So here's some of the products and services that we provide here at Boyer & Associates. And Now I think I'll turn it over to Amir so we can talk about BI360 from Solver. And let me switch that over.
Sure. Okay, let's see if I got the buttons here. There we go.
Yep, got the right button, so you should be good. And also wanted to mention, if you have any questions throughout, go ahead, type those in the questions box, and then I will read those aloud, and then Amir can answer those for us.
All right, thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. This is Amir Abbasi. I'm a solutions engineer here at Solver. Been with the company for many years, seen many implementations. I just wanted to walk you through BI360. Before I do that, just a quick little tidbit about Solver and who we are as a company. So Solver's been around for over 20 years now. We've been in the corporate performance management space for that entire time, specializing in different products. And BI360 is really the third iteration of our product suite here. And you can see that, we cover everything from reporting, budgeting, dashboarding, and data warehousing. So we'll touch upon a little bit of everything today, and really excited to show you what we can do here. All right, so this is going to be BI360. Now, Paul mentioned that we can go cloud, we can go on-premise. We're at the cusp right now of releasing the big on-premise 5.0 release. So if anyone here has seen older versions of BI360, it will all look like the version I'm showing you today. And again, you have your choice. You can go on-premise, you can go cloud. It's completely up to you. All right, so what you see here is my login screen. Now I'm just using a normal browser over here, and it is completely up to you in terms of which browser you want to use. So if you want to use Mozilla, you want to use Internet Explorer, so forth and so on. All of those are fair game. Now I'm going to go ahead and just get logged in. This is, one thing I'm going to mention is that everything that you see today is going to be in the aspect of an administrator and someone that has access to all the data and reports. Now, in your organization, you will make a decision based on a person's role and what things they should see, what data they should have access to, and what reports and such they should be interacting with. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But everyone, in terms of your end users, will be able to access the reports to the web, just like you see here. So there's my username, password. That's my database I'm going to go ahead and get logged into. And you'll see that when you get logged in here, everything will always be greeting you with a homepage here. So I have a nice little welcome homepage. You want to think of this as kind of a splash landing page. You can kind of add whatever you'd like. I'm always at trade shows. I'm going around, so maybe I'll see you at a Microsoft event if we happen to bump into each other. And if I get too busy, I have videos here that I can just play on my computer while I go tend to someone, and I can come back to you. So that's one use for me. You can add videos, you could add dashboards, you could add any sort of important metrics. I like to say if you're a new hire, this homepage can be customized to add links to directories or videos about BI360 to get them trained up. Okay. Now there's going to be a couple of buttons up here at the top. There's feedback, there's help. There's also a button over here called notifications where you'll see, I've already looked through my notifications, but if there were anything new, they would come with a little red bubble here, just like you see when you get a text message on your phone, and you can see all the different notifications that you're receiving. I have, almost 100 over here that I can look through. So that's a very useful tool to keep in mind. Now, the first question we almost always get, I'm going to go over here from home to data warehouses. Hey, I'm on a particular ERP. How do I get my data into your system so that I can do some reporting? All right. Now, it's going to slightly vary depending on what you want to do. If it's on cloud or on premise, you'll always have the option of taking all of your data, especially if you're doing things like consolidations, eliminations, currency conversions. Then you can use our data warehouse to consolidate all of that info in one place. You could also, for on-premise, this is something that we've been known for. We have programs to connect directly to your ERP. So if that's Great Plains or SL or NAV, so forth and so on, we can connect directly to the database and report off of that as well. Okay. Now I'm going to go here to data. I'm going to integrations just to show you. We have a whole marketplace of what we call different API connectors, and quite simply put, these are just connector wizards that will allow us to go ahead and expose data from your system. So whether that's GP, if it's a generic SQL, any sort of SQL database we can connect to, or any one of the other Microsoft products here. Basically, we're always adding new connectors. We have a whole team dedicated to building connectors out and making them better. But these are basically used by our team and the folks at Boyer when we do a setup to expose your data and pull it in. And once we pull it in, you can schedule those on any sort of basis. So you can see I have a couple of integrations here. I can go ahead and hit the edit button. All right, just edit some of these things. And I could edit any sort of fields, and it just goes through this nice, easy wizard that allows you to map whatever fields you have in your system to the fields that we might have or create here in the data warehouse. Okay. Now,
Quick
once you
question
have,
already. We got questions already. So hey, question came in is, can the BI360 cloud be used with an on-premise version of GP 2018?
Yes, I could double check with you for you, but yes, you should be able to port that information depending on how you're receiving it. Either there's a couple of different ways, like I showed before, either through file extracts, and the most ideal way would obviously just be connecting straight to that GP instance and pulling it over. So we could either do that through OData, a SQL connection, or through a file dump.
Perfect, thanks.
All right. Now, now looking at this, and we have the integrations. Once you set them up, you can actually set them up to any sort of frequency that you like, whether it's weekly, monthly, daily. You can also run these on demand. So let's just say it's the month-end close. You can always run these integrations on demand and make sure that all the reports that you're looking at have the latest, greatest data in them. Okay. Now, once we have those integrations run, and this is something that I think is really unique and special about Solver and our tool here, is that we use a relational database. So you actually can see all the data elements that make up any of your reports. So let's say, for example, I'm looking at my general ledger. I know that my general ledger transactions will have things like account, category, currency, department, entity, so forth and so on. And I can always click into any one of these dimensions that we load in, such as account, and you can see not only all of the system fields that you're bringing in from your ERP, such as the account name, description, if you fill out account type or category in those systems, those will also come in. But you'll notice over to the right, I have custom fields that don't exist in that ERP, and I can actually go and create those right here in the data warehouse and maintain those rollups here. And it's a really effective and useful tool when it comes to reporting. So for example, I have rollup level 1 and 2. I can use these sorts of labels to create a nice formatted balance sheet, right? Over to the right, I have my own rollup index. I might have one just to tag which counts are trial balance or not, so forth and so on. And so you can see, you can have any number of custom rollups that we call these attributes over to the right. And you can, by the same effect, go and create any sort of trees off of this data as well. So you can see, I might want to organize my accounts so that I can see what a structure of an income statement looks like, or what a structure of a balance sheet looks like, and I could pull these trees into my report to quickly iterate those types of views and structures. Same thing goes for any other field in here. So for example, if I click on the entity field, right, you can see here's all the different codes I have, and I can go to the trees, and I could also create any sort of trees, minority interest, consolidation trees over time, just so that you have a nice clear view of how your business is run. Okay. All right. Now, one other thing that we have in here, and I don't know how applicable it is unless you have an international presence, but we do have a currency conversion engine in here that allows you to go populate different rate types you might have, averages, closing, budget, etc. We could do daily rates, and in this example, I could just show you, average monthly rates, for example, where we can go to an FX site, scrape the currency translations rates, have them populate in here, and basically there's an engine that goes and takes all of the data that you have coming in from, let's just say your system, let's say it's GP, right? We'll take all the US, we'll take all the local rates, whether that's in euros, Canadians, maybe you have Hong Kong dollars or something, and I'll go ahead and translate that to a US base rate for you. So you don't have to do any of that stuff on the reporting level or the ERP itself. The data warehouse can handle a lot of that for you. Okay. Last piece before I move on from this now, other than the data warehouse being a really easy, relational database, we make it super easy for the users to not have to go to IT to do any sort of configurations or changes. And what I mean by that is as long as you have access to this, I can go right here through this tab in this UI to go and create different fields, modules, dimensions, so forth and so on. So for example, I can go here to dimensions. I can go open up that account field, right? That's my account dimension label. And this is where you can see all the system fields that you're pulling in from your ERP, and then all of the different custom fields that you might want to create and maintain here in the warehouse. So for example, there's my rollups, there's Amir's rollup index that I showed you earlier. And if I wanted to, I can hit the add button here and I could create a different data type, short text, long text, comment. These are actually the data types that you would find in SQL if you're creating a new table. Of course, you don't need to know any sort of code here. I can go ahead and give it a label, right? Webinar rollup. Give it a data type, let's call that short text, hit the save button, and you'll see that goes in there. Now, when I go back to the overview tab and click on the account, scroll over to the right, you'll see that webinar rollup is there, and I can go ahead and populate this, any which way that I want and use that either as a filter or label on my report, which we'll get to a little bit later. Okay. All right, so now that's a quick overview of the data warehouse. And once you get your data, then the idea is that, hey, we want to go and create some nice reports. So I'm going to go over here to live reporting. All right, and this is where you'll see, look, I have lots and lots and lots of reports. So depending on how many reports you have in your organization, this could be quite overwhelming. So the idea is here in this environment with BI360, I can take any of these reports, which are just, some of them are a mix of just Excel upload reports, and some of them are, the majority are reports that were created using BI360. But the idea is I can go and click on any of these reports, hit the categorize button over here, and you'll see all the categories over to the left side show up, and you can actually go and create your own categories with parent and child nodes. And once I'm done with that, the idea is, hey, as an end user, I come in, I could say, hey, which ones are my control reports? Okay, great. That's what those look like. Which one are my financial reports? Which ones are my monthly reports? So forth and so on. And you can actually go and share these categories out that you create with other users. They'll get a little notification bubble here that says that a certain set of reports have been shared with them as well. Okay, there's also easy ways to find your reports, either by name over here. If you want to quickly search, that's also available for you. Okay, now high level, we got some data into the warehouse. I might want to look at, let's just say I'm a new hire to your company. I might want to look at how we actually run our monthly process here, month end close. So I can open up one of these reports, and actually this isn't a report at all. This is just an Excel template that we've uploaded. So, I might want to include this in any sort of package so that someone who's new could understand what the process is. And they say, okay, well, I closed the books, I've loaded the data right in the warehouse. Now let's go ahead and run some financial reports and such to make sure everything is good. Okay, so I can go back out to live reporting then. And the idea is I can run any of these other reports to quickly look and see if everything's good. So let me go ahead and run one of these trial balances. I'll open that up. Now, this is an example here of a report that was created in Excel using BI360. So what you'll see here is we're actually looking at an Excel template just here in a web viewer. Makes it nice and easy for the end user to look at their data without having to go right into Excel. And this also means that if you're in an airport or something, you're traveling, you can actually access this through your phone or tablet. So if there's something pressing that comes up while you're on vacation, I know most of us, and I included, will try to keep those types of work or inquiries away. But let's just say you're out late at night and you're sitting in the bed. You see that you're supposed to run some report. You can open up your phone, actually run this on the go. You don't have to have your desktop or the file with you. Now, one of the nice things about this, you can see this is a trial balance. I see the data in here. You can switch the different periods here. This is what we call parameters up at the top. And this is basically just different slicers that the designer of this report has allowed you to toggle by to get different sets of data. So I can switch, the periods in here. Likewise, you can see company. My database has, several different companies, and yours could have several companies or departments as well. And I can go ahead and switch what I'm reporting off of. So right now we're reporting off of my Canada division. I can go ahead and switch to corporate US if I'd like and just say use value. Now, one thing I wanted to point out before I leave the screen is, again, everything is security driven. That's all taken care of here under administration. Very easy to set up role-based security at the application layer. So all that means is if I'm not supposed to see anything such as corporate US, EMEA, Asia, maybe these other tree entity nodes, we can restrict all that on security, and that won't even be an option here. And even if the folks knew the code names like SUS and try to go ahead and manually type that in and run, they wouldn't get any data back unless they were specifically given access to those codes. Okay, so I have corporate US here, different period. You can actually go ahead and re-execute that data, and you'll notice that it's going to go fetch the latest data from your database, go ahead and render it in this report, and now you can see everything is showing in terms of our US company. And I can go down here, look, everything balances out. But interestingly enough, I can see high level, what's going on. So maybe last year we were in a cash deficit. Our year to date, look, we're out of that deficit. That's a huge variance. So if we wanted to, we can look a little bit more into it. And of course, in any of this data or information such as cash, I can always right click and do what we call a drill down to get more detail. So for example, where's that 16,530 number come from? Go ahead, do a right click drill down, and I can see, okay, it's all in US dollars. Here's the different month transactions, cash amount, what month it was hitting, what period, what departments, and then the amounts associated with it as well. Okay, now if you do a more detailed drill down, this is a summary level one, you get everything from invoices to journal entry numbers as well. Okay, now I went ahead and looked at this. This is good. I can go back out to my live reporting. We could run many other reports. One other report that might be useful because I saw a huge variance there in cash is I could, for all of my entities here, you can see I picked every single entity, Asia, Canada, Europe, US. I can run a giant variance report where it literally will go through every single account, in this case, all my expense accounts for every entity, pull in the budget numbers that we've entered, show us a variance, and we can go ahead and see what the variances are. And you can actually sort these, right? Ascending, descending, whatever makes sense to see what the biggest variance is. You can see here, that's not too meaningful, right? $2 variance that creates $2 difference creates a 32% variance. So you could also sort by the amounts here as well. Okay. All right, one other example I'm going to show you. Let's go back out to live reporting. Let's go to financial reports here, and I could go ahead and open up a P&L. Now, if I take a look at this from a very high level, again, this one's running in Canada. I can go ahead and switch the entities if I'd like using this parameter up here. But again, just another example of a BI360 report. You can see this one has nice charts and graphs in Excel that are feeding off of the data that's being brought in from the database here. One interesting thing too, all the different formats, right? We have conditional formatting going on in here, some formulas to give us total revenues, profit margins. All that is really easy to do, as you may know, and in Excel, so you're not having to go learn a new tool. All of that is just calculations you can perform in Excel. And one of the nice things here too is you'll see those roll-ups that we created in the data warehouse, how you can bring those in, and you can even bring in the account mappings under them to make nice reports like this, right? And we have categories basically in the accounts under it. And of course, if I have any questions on this data, like where this full-time salary comes from, you can always still do those drill downs that we talked about. All right, and look at that. Lots and lots of data all in Canadian dollars because I'm running this for Canada here. Okay, now a couple of other things that we have up top that I just want to point out. Now let's say we need to give this to an auditor or someone outside of our organization. You can always hit the export to Excel button here. It'll give you a nice download. Now this will disconnect it from the database, meaning you won't be able to do your drill downs anymore, but you will have your report, and this is actually on my other screen. I'll drag it over. You will have your report over here. It's a nice static report, but the great thing is even though it's static, it does save all of the different formulas that were used to create those calculations. And as a consultant who worked on a lot of different engagements, this was always gold to me, because if I saw a variance and I didn't know what the variance was and the variance was wrong, I would go crazy and probably drag my client in and say, I don't understand where this variance is coming from. Whereas in this case, if I just got this report, I can go ahead and check the formulas here. Okay, all right, I'm gonna close this down. A couple other things we can do here. We can always leave comments on a high level to the report. If you want to attach those sorts of comments here, you can just hit the comment button. You can actually upload any sort of template. So if I just wanted to upload that template, hit apply here, you'll see it comes out with a little comment sheet where I can say, our revenues look great. And I could save those comments and they actually go along with the sheet. So anyone who opens this will go ahead and see those comments that were inputted. We'll see more robust commenting and more detailed level commenting at the cell level, again, until budgeting in a second. Okay, a couple other things here. So we can always share reports. There's also a button here called send to an archive, which we'll talk about in a second when we get into an archive. But one thing that I wanted to just point out is, right now you see that all of these reports are, separated, right? They're each treated as individual reports where I go in and open them. Let's just say you wanted to create a workbook with all of these reports in one giant workbook. You can actually click on these reports, hit the add to package button here, and you can go and create any sort of new package, or it will take these three reports and consolidate them into one. So what I mean by that is, let me go ahead and get out of here. I actually have that package right here. You'll see it comes up in red. And when I go ahead and launch that report, you're going to see that it takes those three reports that I specifically pointed out, the P&L, the balance sheet, the cash flow. Let's say I put those in a package and you get one giant workbook here with all of those tabs and fields in one workbook. Okay. All right. So as far as live reporting goes, not too much to it. You can do your drill downs. You have your parameters to switch things. We obviously can stay very organized with these categories and packages if we wanted to create those. We have the ability to export those out to Excel. We can also archive any of these reports. So archive is really important because let's just say, I'm done with my financial month-end close process. I can go into any of these reports. So let's just say it's that P&L, and I say, hey, this is a report that I want to make sure I add to our presentation or month-end reports. You can hit the send to archive button here, and once it does that, users can then just go into this archive folder to see all of the executed and saved reports. Now, this could be a whole list of reports that you've maintained over time. Let's say at the end of every month you run 10 particular reports, you send them to the archive, they will stay in here. Users can then go, you see it almost opens up like a Outlook or inbox that you have for emails, and I can go and say, hey, let's open up this P&L and maybe this sales by salesperson report. You can hit the open button. It'll actually open up both reports side by side. And you'll see I can't change anything in terms of parameters here, but the great thing about this is it's still connected to your database, meaning if I wanted to, here's my sales by salesperson report. Let's say I want to see what Elizabeth did here in July. I can always right click and still do my drill downs into that data. Okay, so that's where it differs from just being a static report. Still have your drill downs available here. You can see all that data in all those fields. The other great thing about the archive here is not only does it serve as kind of a repository for your finally executed reports where maybe you're done with your month end, you don't want any changes to them, you archive them, people can go and look at the archives then. But if you spend any amount of time doing presentations, you can actually click on these reports here and do what we call add to playlists. Again, you can create your own new playlist or add it to an existing one. You'll see, I have a couple ones set up here. But once you've added them to a playlist, you can just go in here as a user. Let's say I put together my month-end deck for my CFO or controller. I go in the next morning, I've added them all to the playlist. We're ready for the presentation. I go in, click on that particular playlist, and then you can hit the show playlist button, and it pretty much launches into a presentation mode here, where I can have just a loose leaf table of contents and switch over to any of the other reports that we might have archived out, such as strategic KPIs. Maybe I want a revenue dashboard. A report just focused on variances, where you can actually have a filter just to filter on things that have variance comments to them. So this comes up almost any month end, and so forth and so on. You can even add a package of reports to the end there. And the great thing about this is, as you go through your presentation, you still have that drill down capability there. So it makes for a nice, really interactive deep dive into your financial reports. Okay, so that's the archive. Now, I want to take a step back and kind of switch gears, right? Looking at the time here, and talk a little bit about what we call budgeting here. So, high level, I can go into this budgeting tab here. Now, in reality, we're not going to have too many folks that come into budgeting, but the idea is, look, it looks the exact same as live reporting. And the thing is, we can see any of these templates. We can organize them in any which way that we think is important. Now, before I get into this budgeting tab, most folks are typically in an organization working on their budgets in a team, right? And depending on how large your organization is, this could be a big headache, or this could be, hey, I'm a one-man show. I'm the one who does all the forecasts and budgets by myself, so I don't really need a workflow. But for most organizations, when you involve multiple hands, then this is a super useful and helpful tool. So workflow, quite simply, is you can go in here, you can create any sort of workflow you think is important. I have one here called payroll, so I'll just go ahead and edit that. And when you set up a workflow, you always just give it a name. You can give it a from and to date. So just like in a normal budgeting deployment, you might have folks that say, hey, you got to finish these templates first, and they have to be done, by next Friday, for example, or this Friday. You can give it a from and to date. Okay, so there's my from. And I could say, let's go out to the 13th or something, or I can go out to the 16th of next month and hit apply. And I'll set up your from and to. Then you give it a reviewer and an approver. So there's me, there's my boss, Michael Scott. He's gonna be the approver in this case. And once I'm done with that, you can go ahead and select any templates that are part of that workflow. So this one's called payroll. I can add a payroll assumptions and personnel template, and then go ahead from there and fill out any sort of parameters. Now, the nice thing about this is I can either let the users decide on these parameters, or if I know that they're supposed to work on only specific departments or entities, I can actually pre-fill it for them here so that they're not going into the templates later and trying to figure out which department or entity they're supposed to be putting in. Okay. So we can lock those things down, make it very user-friendly, select the users, and once you're done, you publish those things out, right? And you'll see here I have quite a few workflows published, these ones up here. And so what users will see then when they log in, they probably won't have access to budgeting, workflow, data warehouse, depending on their rights. If they're just a budget user, they come in and they'll only have access to basically this assignments tab. Makes it really easy for them to navigate, and they'll see all of the different workflows and budget assignments that they have here. And so they can go through any of these workflows then to complete their budget assignment. So for example, we might have a workflow here for our management team where we have strategies and goals. This might be something they do at the beginning of the year where they put in some values, purposes, strengths and weaknesses, and then they target a couple of KPIs that are important to them, right? Like how many people they're going to hire, cash and equivalents, what our net income target will be. And users can actually go ahead, populate all this data, and you'll see there's a save data button here, because with any of our budgeting templates, you can actually go in, you can create templates that immediately write data from those templates back into the warehouse. And that's, what we call the budgeting or forecasting process here. Okay. So here's different users. They can go in, populate those numbers. Same thing, I could go back out to my assignments, right? I can go through my forecasts, annual budgets. Maybe I have one specifically for my budget manager where they go in first and they're going to open up a template here called like assumptions. Okay. And the user here, they can see all of the different budget assumptions that are important for their budget process, right? In my case, this one's just set up for really payroll, but these can track any sort of metrics or fields that you think are important to capture in terms of your budget process. So in this case, let's go ahead. I have my FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, maybe some benefits amounts. And if I wanted to, I can go ahead and change these amounts up. Let's just say that's 8%. And when I'm happy, I can go ahead and save that data back. Now, during the workflow process, if there's any questions about what you're supposed to put in, there's this section over here called the activity log, and I can open that up. And you can see I've already typed in some things, but you can have a dialogue with your approver here, and you can see everything from when the assignment was started to any sort of commentary like, I'm not sure what the new FICA rates are. Can you advise? And Michael, who's my approver here, he can go in here and say, yeah, Amir, this is what you should consider. I can make the changes here, and when I'm done, there's a finish assignments button. I can go ahead and hit that button, and Michael will then get a either reject or approve button on his side. And if he's approved it, that goes ahead, that saves all the data in, and we're good to go. And now from an end user's perspective, they're only working on what they think is important, and everyone else, like a workflow administrator, they can come back out and monitor the progress. So if I wanted to, I can actually click on any of these workflows, hit the status here, and I can see which reports have been started, which ones are in progress, which ones are completed. I will even see if there are ones that were rejected. I would create another category here to see which ones are rejected, so that I have a very good idea of how close we are to finishing our budget processes. All right.
So Amir, we got a question, or we got a good question here. So the question is the data fed throughout the month, or does it need to be uploaded? I think that might be a good conversation of talking about the ERP data versus the budget data, and how we have to update that, or is it going to be something you can manually run?
Yeah, so depends on if I'm understanding the question correctly. So the idea is I'm using the data warehouse in this case. So all the data that you have from your ERP in terms of actuals, so forth and so on, those will be pulling in, as we discussed a little bit before, through those connectors, right? And we could schedule that to be, hey, pull in data from ERP every couple of hours, so forth and so on. Now the budget data that you're entering, you have a couple of options with that. Obviously, we're entering that budget data through these forms, either through a workflow process or directly by going to budgeting and opening up those templates. That data, once it's saved, actually saves back to this data warehouse. So it depends on your need. Most folks will say, hey, can I take that data that I just saved in and export that out and feed it back into my source system? You can certainly do that, right? You can, anything that you save in here into the warehouse, you can extract and put back into your ERP. If, for example, you need to generate invoices or something off that data. But I always say that because all your data is already here in the data warehouse, and that's the engine that you're reporting off of, there really isn't a need to go and send it back to the ERP. You're doing all your live reporting out of the system. Your data warehouse has all your live numbers, your actual numbers, and then you're saving budget data back to it. And you can do that budget to actuals kind of view just right in here. Matter of fact, if I open up that P&L, you'll notice that it has a column in here just for budgets, right? There's my budget section, there's my actuals. And so this is already seeing all the budget data that is being inputted from those templates into the warehouse, pulling it back and displaying it here on the report. Of course, your actuals are coming on a scheduled basis from your ERP as well. Okay, so you definitely have the option, depending on what you want to do. If you want to export that budget data once it's saved back out. You can do that. You can go here to Data Explorer. Let's say I saved it in General Ledger, Budget Information. You can do the view, and then it'll show you all the transactions, and you can actually export these transactions out and then re-upload it into your source system. But of course, like I said, they both already live here, so it's depending on if you want it to just live here or you want to send it back to your ERP for reporting purposes. Okay. All right. I'm going to flip back to this just to show one quick example here. Now, high level, I did want to show this. So, we're talking about the workflow. I just want to show you kind of how this goes in practice. So I'm going to sidestep the workflow now, go straight into the template. Again, most folks won't have access to the budgeting tab themselves. They'll go through some sort of workflow process, or they just go to assignments to see what they have to work on, especially in a bigger deployment. Let's say I'm the budget administrator in here. I could go straight into budgeting, open up any of these tabs. We saw this assumptions tab earlier. And let's just say I want to change some of these numbers. I can make that 8%. I can make that 750. Let's say the rest of these drivers are good. If I'm happy with that, you can actually hit the Save Data button here, and it's going to go ahead and save that data from this report directly into the warehouse. And so now any reports that I have that are looking at these fields as drivers will automatically be updated. So what I mean by that is, let's get out of assumptions. Let's go back out to our budgeting tab. And I can go ahead and open up another form, which I know uses some of those drivers, namely this one called personnel. Okay, so I'll go ahead and bring in my personnel. Again, now you'll see those parameters depending on which department and such that you're running this for. This one right now is running for our finance department, but I can go ahead, if I had access to, I can do sales and marketing. I can re-execute that report, and I'll go ahead and fetch all that data from the data warehouse and present it here. By the way, this is a good example of a report that you might be uploading operational or data that you don't necessarily keep in your ERP, and you can do that with any of those connectors that we showed. And in this case, I might get maybe an extract from let's say a payroll vendor like ADP. I could upload that data and then create nice reports off of it. So for example, anything in blue here is data that we would be getting from that extract. Some of the stuff in yellow as well, right? Like titles, salaries, that would be all in those extracts as well. But the things in yellow are fields that we can obviously update, right? Those are configured here with BI360 to be updated. So for example, let's say Ted here becomes a senior marketing, or let's just say he got promoted to senior marketing associate from coordinator, right? Okay, and then we can go ahead. Let's say he's going on leave in November. He had this big plan that's been approved, so we'll plan for that. We'll go ahead and in April give him a nice big 50% increase. All right, and we'll say he gets benefits too. You can see how we can create nice forms with the combination of data that you're pulling in using BI360 and Excel, and we can have really robust calculations. So I can do his salary calculations month over month, right? We know he's leaving in November, so it zeroes out in December. We know he's getting a 50% hike in April, so you see that take into effect as well. And you'll notice the salaries are different each month as well, just because that it based on the assumptions before we were tracking days per month, and those are coming in here and being applied to the calculation. Same thing happens when I get to the FICA rate. You'll notice when I updated that to 8%, automatically updates this entire section to now do FICA expense calculations based on that 8%. And I could have changed FUTA, I could have changed SUTA, so forth and so on. So this becomes a really strong template where if I'm doing the same thing year over year over year, I can pretty much control most of these calculations by just going ahead and updating the assumptions forms year over year and then just hitting save. And this form will do everything from benefits to even FTE hours, and down below we'll summarize everything and save it back to the general ledger so that I have those expense accounts fully accounted for as well. Okay, so really helpful. You can, again, use these parameters to toggle what you want to go to. You can use workflow to make sure people are working on these things in a certain order and they can have a dialogue. And you've seen here with budgeting, you can go straight into the forms as well if you're an administrator and do those changes. Now, a nice, great thing about this too is when you save this data, all this data gets saved to a particular code. So whether this is budgeting or forecast, you just point all this data to be saved to a code. In those codes, you can actually create and manage in the data warehouse by yourself. So this allows you to go and create what we call different versions of codes where I can save things to budget. And then maybe next time I'll say, hey, let's just start budget 2 with the numbers that we had in budget and just update those. Or same thing with forecast, save everything to a code called FCST. And then later on, we'll just roll forward those numbers and make some changes based on some new revised inputs that we have, or we can do a third, fourth, fifth, any number of versions that you want, you can go ahead and create and have as well. All right, last form, I'm going to show one other form in here, and then we'll spend the rest of the time at the end here for questions. So I'm going to get into budgeting. Last form, again, you can do this again through the assignments tab, but here's a nice little view of a form that most companies will have some level of familiarity with, where you just have your departments, right? And you have a bunch of expense accounts for those departments that you need to account for. You can see mine's partially filled out here, but the idea is these templates can be engineered any sort of way. I have a full year's budget here. Over to the right, I've brought in actual and forecast data, or the designer of the report has, so that I can refer back to it. Of course, with any of these data, like the actuals, let's say I want to refer to it, but I'm trying to figure out, was it really 167,000? You could still do your drill downs with that data here, right? You can see that's an available option. Same with the forecast numbers, by the way, right? As long as it's saved forecast numbers, you can drill down those numbers as well. And over to the left, then I can either make these cells equal to the cells over the right. If I want to bring in actuals, you can type in your numbers here. You can use any sort of nomenclature that you think is important to fill these numbers out. But you can also go to this section here called spreading and line item details. I can open that up, and this will give me a couple options. And fortunately, my reference data right here doesn't have anything right now, but if you had data for past years, you can just say, hey, use that as a baseline. You can actually create your own distribution rules as well. And here in this case, let's just say I want to do an even spread of $12,000. I can hit spread here. There's 1,000 across the line. I could go to that exact same line too, by the way. Right, let's say it's on the main line here, and I could adjust every value by a percentage or unit amount. So let's say I do 10% here, adds 10% to every line, close that up, and you can see how that populates that entire row. Same thing goes, if I wanted to, I could go to this training line. The line item detail part of this is also really nifty in that I can go in here, let's say I go into this line item details. This time I'm going to use my own distribution rule. Let's say it's 18,000. I hit spread. It's going to take that 18,000, and based on the weights that I created in my own distribution rule, it'll assign that out here. And then with these line item details, this is basically a user going below the account line to add any sort of details. So for example, I'm in training right now. I could say this is a BI360 training, right? And then I could say this is a ERP training, right? And I could add any sort of amounts in here. And by the way, with any of these numbers, let's say this is a huge number here in February. If I needed further justification, you can see there's the line item detail comment section, and I can say this includes travel costs to fly to LA for personal on-site training. Okay, all of those comments, details, all of these numbers, they get saved with it as long as I populate. You can see here, there's the amounts. It's total of the 2 line items that I had for the ERP and BI360 training here in the month of February. I have the comments, and when I hit save, all of that data goes through, and I could create reports then that show everything from the accounts to the details below it to the comments that are attached to those details as well. Of course, you can have different levels. We saw one on the reporting one where I had a sheet or report level comment. This one, you've seen it down to the cell level, and of course, you can have row by row level comments in here as well that you can save back. All right. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause here. There's a couple of auxiliary things that I can point out. Everything in terms of the administration, user license setup, it's all done through these tabs, so there's no need to open up separate applications or have any sort of technical knowledge to go and do that kind of work. Makes it really easy for you as the end user to not rely on IT so much, as long as they're okay with you having that level of access. You can go in here, you can manage different roles, you can manage what level of access users have by those roles, what permissions they have, so forth and so on. You can manage what kind of licenses they have access to. So for example, you can see I have access to everything, but like we discussed earlier, maybe you don't want folks to have access straight to the budgeting files here in budgeting. You want them to go through assignments. You can take away those licenses. They can have only an assignments license. So when they log in, they come straight here to assignments. They see what workflows and budget assignments they have, and they get to work. Okay. All right, that's it for today. I wanted to just pause here and see if there were any questions for me. I know we didn't go over report design itself in this session just because it's a kind of a shortened webinar. But if anyone has interest in to see how we iterate and create those reports, then Paul and I would be happy to help you in those as well. All right.
Yes, thanks, Amir. Yeah, so it was more of a high level. So if anybody's looking for more detailed information on kind of building some of those reports, then definitely here, I'll put up my contact information here so we can kind of go there. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can get those questions answered. So, and I don't see we have any other questions right now. So, oh, I see one more. What is the implementation time frame for BI360?
Sure. Paul, do you want to answer that, or you want me to kind of help out there?
That's kind of a tricky one. I'm gonna let you take that one.
Okay, sure. So, implementation timeframes really vary. It really depends on, quite a few factors, everything from resourcing, obviously, right? Who's available to work on the project. That's always the first step. But typically, whether it's you're working with Boyer, Boyer works with us as well on a lot of these deployments. It really just depends, right? If you have lots of data sources, you're trying to do something really complex in terms of budgeting, it could drag out with training to a month or two, 2 months. If it's pretty straightforward, hey, I just want reporting straight off my ERP, and that's all I'm really looking for right now, that could be a few weeks. What I'd like to say is that it typically just depends on timing and resourcing. And that's really the biggest weight there. It's not so much the work itself. Once the resource is available to do the setup, usually the setup just involves, hey, let's get your data in the way that you want in the beginning, and then we teach you how to kind of maintain that process yourself. Training, right? Having a trainer, whether you do it online yourself or you have a trainer come out to teach you the tool. That all just depends on scheduling. I would say most of our implementations probably happen within 2 months, and that will include everything from, signing a statement of work to having a trainer deployed to getting the implementation done in terms of data to then having some reports that were built out and then having your organization running on it.
Thanks. Yeah, it does vary quite a bit, depending on the data and that. So definitely. So, okay. Well, thanks all for everybody coming. I will end the webinar right now then, unless we have any more questions. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.